Hate speech. It can incite racism, prejudice, even violence. The debate over what is and isn't hate speech is much more important than you may realize. There may come a time in the near future when it becomes illegal to publicly promote certain standards concerning abortion, homosexuality, or marriage. Today we're going to talk about hate speech in the public arena, how to avoid hate speech in your family, and the politics of hate speech. It's important that you understand the world you live in and the positive news of the world beyond today.
Join our host Gary Petty and his guests as they help you understand your future on Beyond Today.
Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That old saying just isn't true. Anyone who has been ridiculed, slandered, or verbally attacked knows that words are powerful and can be used as weapons to hurt others. Tell a child long enough that she is stupid or he is ugly, and eventually they will begin to believe you. Parents and children, husbands and wives, the dearest of friends have been separated for a lifetime because of hurtful words spit out in a time of anger. Words have been used to incite riots and wars, promote racism, and ruin the reputations of good people. Hate speech. Words used to denigrate and hurt others. Some Christians have been accused of hate speech because of our position on abortion and gay rights. Some opponents claim that Jesus himself said that we shouldn't judge one another. So to say that sexual relationships outside of marriage, no-fault divorce, or abortion is wrong because it's judgmental and non-Christian. In reality, not only non-religious people, but most religious people would be terribly offended if they read the Bible and knew what Jesus and his followers really taught. Jesus spoke out publicly against what we would call no-fault divorce. He condemned people for certain religious practices. He was so against sex outside of marriage that he condemned sexual fantasies about someone that's not your marriage partner. Talk about abstinence. Here's the heart of the problem. A Christian, if he or she is to be a true Christian, must not only accept Jesus as Savior, but also accept the teachings of Jesus and live by them. The hard truth is that many Christians don't even know or have outright rejected the teachings of Jesus. It is his teachings that provide a moral compass, a direction finder on how to deal with the major problems of life. Without this moral compass, a set of rules that define right and wrong for everyone, people simply make up their own definitions of morality. It is amazing to me how someone can claim it is hate speech to speak out against same-sex marriage as being morally bankrupt when marriage has been the foundation of Western society for centuries. Okay, here's the hard truth. If you really know and believe the teachings of Jesus, it is your personal responsibility to enter the realm of public ideas and promote the superiority of the teachings of Jesus Christ. Referring to his disciples, Jesus said that you can't hide a light under a bushel. But how can Christianity have a positive impact on society when so many of those who claim to follow Christ don't even live by what he taught? Christianity is losing the public battle because we're losing the private battles inside our own lives. Ultimately, Christians would rather trust their own hearts than actually follow the teachings of the founder of their religion. The most effective way to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ is to live the gospel of Jesus Christ. As a Christian, I believe that most abortions are murder. It's the same morally destructive act that when a person kills someone for money or envy or out of hatred. It is an act of violence against the most helpless. What has happened in a society that labels the defense of babies as hate speech? Christians who understand the teachings of Jesus, they don't use words to incite violence, nor do they hate the people who disagree with them. But we must speak out against issues like racism, homosexuality, dishonesty, and injustice because Jesus did. Then there's the inevitable, well, Christians just want to force their ways on others, and they're a bunch of hypocrites. You know, there are no perfect Christians, but there is a perfect way of life taught by the Creator of life. Spreading the message Jesus brought is like a lost, hopeless person who has found the Creator's map of life and gives then that map to another lost, hopeless person. Because Christians are noted for what we stand against, it is easy to forget where Christians are supposed to support family, the basic dignity and value of every human life, and the message of the Creator's desire to change your life for the better. What good is it to claim that something is wrong without presenting solutions to the problems? True Christianity is about solutions to your problems. It's about change. Change at the very core of who you are. It is really this simple. Human beings naturally want to live a way of get. Get what is mine. Defend my rights. Blame my problems on someone else. Jesus Christ taught a way of give, personal responsibility, and dedication to standards of behavior established by the Creator. Listen, now be honest. How different would everything around you be, and everyone else, if everyone just approached every situation with the simple idea of what can I do that is good for the other person? The way of give. There would be no broken families, no crime, no abandoned children, no injustice. Now, don't use the excuse that no one else will live by that way, so why should I? God is changing the world one person at a time. Let it start with you. Remember, you can't solve today's problems with the same old solutions. You'll simply arrive at the same old problems. The way of life taught by Jesus, it's not easy. But really, what choice do you have? It's the only way that will change your life. To stand for the good of family values, sexual morality, and the human dignity of a fetus will draw the criticism of those who are against these truths. The real crime would be to give in and allow those who promote the way of get to be the only influence in the public arena. On Beyond Today, we're going to give you some new solutions to your problems. In the next segment, we're going to talk about the effects of real hate speech on children with Todd Carey. So you don't want to miss this. It's very important. We'll be right back.
Time. In a time of instant disaster, how can you have time to find the truth? It takes time to get the facts, time to think, especially about the most important person in history, Jesus Christ, whose truth is so distorted and so misrepresented.
What can we know of him from a Christianity today with its own history of lies and manipulation?
Now you can save time by getting the latest biblical research by calling toll-free 1-888-886-8632
Or go online to beyondtoday.tv for your free copy of Jesus Christ, the Real Story.
With Christianity's 500 denominations in confusion about the man it claims as its leader, you don't have time to waste. Was Jesus only a man or God? Find out what he really taught and practiced by calling toll-free 1-888-886-8632. That's 1-888-886-8632.
Or go to beyondtoday.tv.
Welcome back, and I do want to urge you to go to beyondtoday.tv and order your free copy of Jesus Christ, the Real Story. This booklet will teach you what Jesus really taught. It can take you to the Bible. You can see what he really taught. You'd be surprised. It's not what most people think he taught. We've been talking about hate speech in the public arena. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about another form of hate speech, and that's what happens inside the family. We're joined by a good friend of mine, Todd Carey. Todd, give me a sort of a practical definition of hate speech.
A good practical definition of hate speech, Gary, is any type of communication that seeks to denigrate, to destroy, disrupt, to tear down another person's credibility. It seeks to tear down their integrity. And the person who is spouting the hate speech, they're doing with the intent of putting that person down, judging them to a degree, saying, this is what you are, this is what you're always going to be, there's no hope of you ever changing, while lifting themselves up and then seeking others who are of their like mind to say, you know, this is what these people are. It could be speaking about an individual or about a group, a culture, or race. You know, hate speech is poison, and it's used quite often.
And it really is trying to make the other person feel worthless, like they have no value.
It really is. It seeks to tell a person that, you know, you have no hope to ever be like me.
How can parents unwittingly use hate speech, not knowing they're doing it, and actually be very devastating to the development of their children?
You know, the Bible talks about, you know, to fathers who are the head of the house. It says, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, lest they be discouraged. Well, that begs the question, how do you provoke your children to wrath? Tell them that they're stupid. Tell them they're inept. Tell them that they don't measure up.
And they're going to believe it because you're the adult.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Compare them to other children. Why can't you be like this? Why can't you be like that? Use great sweeping terms like, you always do this, or you never do this. And over a period of time for a child who's looking up to their parents for guidance and direction, Gary, they're going to come to a point in time and say, well, if Dad says I'm this, or if Mom says I'm useless or I'm an idiot, then it must be so, because parents are smarter than me. And the sad thing about it, Gary, a parent can reach for hate speech and utilize it.
What's the hard thing here for a parent to realize is you can't tell a child you're stupid. Now, a child does something wrong. I mean, you can't use this kind of speech. It really is hate speech.
Yes.
So a child does something wrong, you can't ignore that either.
Yes.
So how does a parent correct a child? How does a parent teach a child the difference between right and wrong without this kind of name calling, without actually hurting the child's self-image, their identity? How do you do that? How do you correct a child without hate speech?
Yes, well, we're told, God tells us, we're to train up our children in the way they should go. You see, and then when they're older, they're not going to depart from that. So that means it's incumbent upon the parent, mom and dad, to sit down with the child and teach them, instruct them. If you want God in your family and rules in the family, they're established for the betterment, for the protection of the children. And when there's an infraction that takes place, if the parent does not act upon that, now what is the child learning? They're saying, well, we have these rules, Mom, but they don't seem to be important to you because, maybe perhaps Mom and Dad, well, they'll make excuse and everybody does it and, we're not going to get you this time. So now what is the child learning? Well, if I do something wrong, there really isn't any accountability. Right. So we have to, as parents, teach that accountability, that it is for the betterment of the child, and you're instilling within them things they're going to carry with them, a value system that one day when they have their children, they're going to say, this was done in my home. We're going to also enact these in my house with my children.
And of course, that accountability, then they have to take responsibility.
Yes.
If you tell a child you're stupid, you're dumb, you're never going to amount to anything, they can't take responsibility for them. So why take responsibility if you're stupid?
Exactly.
Right.
You think, okay, well, then I'm stupid. Why go forward? And you have to ask a question, Gary, where, hate speech, where does it come from? Christ said it's what comes out of a man that is poisonous and harmful. When you talk about hate speech, what is happening within that individual who is speaking such things, saying such words? How does that person feel about themselves? Perhaps they don't like who they are. Perhaps when they were a child, they had the hate speech coming to them. It's what they grew up with, what they're familiar with. This is what my parents did. And they take that and perpetuate that cycle into their household. And now what is the child learning? Well, okay, this is what's done here. It's normal. I'll do it with my family too.
See, that's a real good point there. Hate speech isn't about the object. It's the person.
Yes.
They feel hate,
Yes.
so they express it. But the object, they may have a totally perverted viewpoint of what that object is or that person is, and yet it comes from inside them.
Yes.
So you said that many times people have hate speech. They'll use hate speech because they experienced it.
Yes.
What advice would you give to a parent who's having difficulty because they use hate speech as a way of correcting a child because that's what they learned? Yeah. What advice would you give?
I would advise them first, God is about relationships, and He wants strong relationships. When you are obeying God and following His directions, you're learning about God and what God wants you to become. As a parent, it's the same thing. You establish rules, and regulations
for the
in a
good of the
household
child.
For the good of the child. And rather than reach for hate speech to denigrate and, harm their character, harm their growth, you can say things to the effect of, because you know your child, you parent your child, you know their strengths, you know the things, the areas they're challenged in, because you have a good relationship, when something does happen, an infraction occurs, you can say, well, you can sit down with your child and say, I know when you do well. I've seen you do this. You have the capacity to do this. That's telling the child now, wow, you're reinforcing that child that although there's a consequence for breaking the rule, I'm not giving up on you. God doesn't give up on us, Gary. As parents, we're not to give up on our children, and we are to parent them, which takes time and resources, but you never give up. And you want to provide those opportunities for them to grow, and you're building that value system within them. As parents, we have to seek to measure our words And when we tell our children, we are teaching them. These are opportunities for teaching. When an infraction occurs, no one likes to be told what to do.
Right.
No one likes getting their feelings hurt, but it's still an opportunity to teach your children, a value system.
And I think a lot of people have to realize if they're using hate speech, they have to step back and say, what problem do I have? What's wrong in my heart, in my mind, that's causing me to use hate speech as usually a method of control, trying to control others?
Yes.
Todd, I want to thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Gary. Good being here.
In the next segment, the Beyond Today panel talks about the politics of hate speech. It's going to be interesting, so don't go away.
It takes time to get the facts, time to think, especially about the most important person in history, Jesus Christ. With Christianity's 500 denominations in confusion about the man it claims as its leader, find out what he really taught and practiced by calling toll-free 1-888-886-8632. That's 1-888-886-8632.
Or go online to beyondtoday.tv for your free copy of Jesus Christ, the Real Story.
Does God really exist? Scientists now say you can prove it. What's the best way to rear your children for success? Questions need positive answers to the world's greatest issues and your personal ones as well. That's what you'll get when you get your free subscription to the Good News magazine. Call toll-free 1-888-886-8632. That's 1-888-886-8632. Or go to beyondtoday.tv for your free subscription. You'll be glad you did.
When you order your free copy of Jesus Christ, the Real Story, we'll also send you a free subscription to the Good News magazine. This is a very important magazine that has all kinds of information that can help you have a better life. And we're not going to ask you for money. It's free. This information was given to us free, and we want to freely share it with you. On Beyond Today, we've been discussing hate speech in the public arena and in our own families. We're joined by our panel of Beyond Today hosts, Darius McNeely and Steve Myers, to discuss the politics of hate speech and our politically charged media. It seems like hate speech is just a label you put on someone's forehead, makes their message absolutely meaningless.
Well, it is. When you disagree with a person's political point of view, then you have that problem of labeling their speech hate speech just because you don't agree with what they say and it goes against your particular agenda. And we see that so often today. In recent years, we've seen the rise of talk radio, which is largely conservative and has been very popular in the United States especially. They have tackled social and moral issues, political issues with a great deal of ability. And those on the other side of the story have not been able to keep up with that. And as a result, well, then they have feel like they are losing, and they engineer certain laws, as they have done, to bring back actually laws that were taken off the books more than 25 years ago that kind of opened up the airwaves. And now they're wanting to get back into the business of regulating really the freedom of speech by certain technicalities as to what can go out on the public airwaves. And it usually revolves around these social and moral issues that are hot button issues today for people.
In fact, you talk about hot button, the hate speech, those two words, hate speech. Well, that says it all. There is real hate speech.
Yes.
I mean, there are real things that people are attacking others and they're just putting people down.
Making them worthless.
Absolutely. And nobody supports that. Nobody likes hate speech.
Right.
But the question is, what exactly is it? And can you, just because you call it that, does that really make it hate speech?
Racial epithets, that has no place in public or private discourse, in the family or any place like that. And anyone who has a responsibility on the airwaves or in public as a personality has no business using that type of language about a racial group or an ethnic group. That is just completely off the table. That takes away from a person's human dignity. That is hate speech, right, and that has no place.
Mm-hmm. Here on Beyond Today, we do not support any political candidate. We don't support any political party. We're talking about what happens in the media and politics of the world around us and how it affects us as Christians. And one of the things that comes up quite often is that there's an accusation against Christians that because of our stance against homosexuality and abortion, we propagate hate speech. But that's not hate speech. We're taking a stand against an idea.
We are. We're taking a stand against a teaching of the Scriptures, of the Bible, upon which one bases their Christianity. Remember, a Christian is one who follows the teachings of Jesus Christ. Not a selective portion of teachings, but all that he taught and all that is in the Holy Bible. And when it comes to specific issues such as homosexuality and abortion, there are some very legitimate and clear teachings from the Bible about those subjects, and to take that stand may not be politically popular or socially popular. Nonetheless, if you're going to be a Christian, you're going to have to state exactly what Christ said about certain issues and what the Bible teaches.
Now, it's interesting that some countries have come out and said some of these biblical things are hate speech.
Like Canada, Australia?
Yeah, England, some of these places, they are. But the point is, the Bible is not hate speech. The gospel of Jesus Christ and the kingdom of God is the truth. God has a plan. He has a way of life. It's called the way. Because we believe it, because we teach it, because we mouth those words that are in those books, does not make it hate speech.
Now, all three of us are very active in the public arena. We're writers, we're on television, we're on radio, we're pastors of churches. So all of us have to deal with presenting the teachings of Jesus Christ in a very positive way to the public. And that's not always easy. I mean, Jesus Christ didn't hold back on his word sometimes. So how do we do that? How do we present the teachings of Jesus Christ without looking like hate speech?
Well, we do it in a way that is clear and is honest. We certainly make a distinction between the person and the sin. Christ had a great deal to say about people's public behavior, about sin, and he was against sin. But Christ had a great deal of compassion for people. And you have to make sure that you distinguish between the two. God hates the sin. He does not hate the sinner. But that doesn't mean he condones the sin within us. Christ said, "Go and sin no more," to a person who was caught in a particular act. The sin has to stop. So we have to be very careful, I think, in one level to distinguish between the two and make sure people understand that.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because Christ said, "Follow me." Do we really follow his example, or do we fudge over things and say, well, if it doesn't hurt anybody else, it really is not an issue, and so if you take a stand, well, that's hateful. Well, no, it's not. Christ took stands on issues. He took stands against sin. And so we aren't followers of Christ if we just throw all of that out of the way and try to be politically correct. That is detrimental.
Christ called people religious leaders. He called them hypocrites.
Snakes. I mean, he said it
liars.
Yes.
He called them liars. I mean, if there was a politically correct atmosphere of the first century, he would have certainly been called up for that alone. He was ultimately gave his life and called before the authorities for other
if you
matters.
look at the last week of his life,
pretty strong.
Yeah, one of the reasons they killed him was because of what he said publicly. He was not condemned for his actions. He lived within the confines of first century Judaism.
That's a good point, too, because why did he do those things? He did them because he loved mankind. He loves man. He wants all to come to repentance and be a part of his family. And so he died, and he addressed all those issues that some would say would be hate speech today. He addressed them all, and he did it out of love. His motivation was love, and not hate. It's labeled just the opposite today.
You know, Gary, the bottom line of your question is that anyone in the public arena who speaks out on an issue from a biblical perspective, more and more in our society as we go forward, is going to be called into question and is going to draw attention to them. We three face that in our work and on this program, and it is just a fact of life today, and it's going to get more so as we move along.
Well, it's amazing to me, you know, if you took a thief, someone who stole, and you said, well, what you're doing is wrong, we wouldn't say that's hate speech. Yet we won't apply that reasoning to homosexuality. You know, if someone steals, it's wrong. That doesn't mean you hate the person. It just means it's wrong. There's behavior that's good for all of society.
And you recognize it and you identify that behavior as wrong for society.
Right.
You know, there's another issue that we need to bring up in regard to hate speech, and that is hate speech that is masquerades as art. Because it comes out in our society today, especially in music. We have everyone has their musical taste, and I'm no different from that. But let's be honest: a lot of the music that we have that is masquerading as art is nothing more than hate speech
against women, especially.
And that's acceptable. That's what's odd. It's acceptable today.
It's acceptable, and in some circles, that's off limits. You can't touch that. And I have been disappointed in the public arena to not see a number of prominent individuals go after that area of the society for what it does to women, to authority figures, to racial groups, to the sexes. But they'll go after individuals and pick on a particular problem that may come out publicly and try to make a statement there, but they won't go after some of the core issues and matters that are at the root of the problems in our society today.
It's amazing. It's double standard.
Absolutely.
Somehow art is free. It can express hate speech. Really, it is.
Well, and you see in art, you see expressions against religion.
Yes.
And it's, again, called art, regardless of what the religion is. And I think we need to understand that also shows a disrespect for the individual, and it doesn't give them license and should not give them license.
And how does that fit in then when I say Christianity is best? God's way. Jesus Christ said, this is the way. Walk in it. Go this way. And if I stand up and say Christianity is the way you ought to go, how is that hate speech? If I, as a Christian, say, I believe this is better than Islam, I believe this way is better than Hinduism, is that hate speech? No, I believe what God tells us in the Bible.
If you don't, why be a Christian?
Exactly.
That's right. Stand up for your belief.
That's right. As Jesus said, out of the abundance of your heart, the mouth speaks. We have more to talk about, so don't go away.
It takes time to get the facts, time to think, especially about the most important person in history, Jesus Christ. With Christianity's 500 denominations in confusion about the man it claims as its leader, find out what he really taught and practiced by calling toll-free 1-888-886-8632. That's 1-888-886-8632.
Or go online to beyondtoday.tv for your free copy of Jesus Christ, the Real Story.
Nearly 2,000 years ago, Jesus of Nazareth walked the dusty roads of Judea, promoting a message of God's love. His entire message hinged on two main ideas of how human beings should respond to God: love towards God and love towards neighbor. The way of give. It's really a simple concept. Treat your neighbor as you wish to be treated, and commit your life to love, obedience, and worship of the Creator. You wonder why such a simple message would get the messenger killed. You see, Jesus also was quick to point out the moral weaknesses of society. He openly denounced religious practices that weren't acceptable to the worship of his Father. He avoided political entanglements and criticized leaders who were unjust. He told people that they had to take responsibility for their own lives and be willing to admit when they were wrong. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says that while it is immoral to commit murder, a truly moral person learns to control anger. He condemns real hate speech, which he says is telling a person that he or she is worthless. Jesus also teaches that a moral person not only avoids sexual relationships outside of marriage, but that a truly moral person avoids sexual thoughts about someone who isn't his or her spouse. Talk about abstinence. Jesus told people that they were sinners, but always reminded them that God was ready to forgive them if they would just simply admit that they were wrong. God is willing to forgive you. Are you willing to admit that your lifestyle is wrong and let the teachings of Jesus Christ guide your life? This may seem like an impossible standard, but Jesus taught that it is one worth striving to achieve. It's time for Christians to stop being intimidated by those who attack the teachings of Jesus and the Bible as hate speech. In the arena of the debate on the meaning of human life, the only workable answers come from the Creator of life. And special thanks to the Beyond Today panel, Darius McNeely, Steve Myers. Thanks, guys. When you're looking to understand your future, remember this program. Please join us next week for another edition of Beyond Today. Thanks for watching.
For the free literature offered on today's program, go online to beyondtoday.tv. Please join us again next week on Beyond Today.